closed, then the people in the house would have to move. And when they moved, the house was vacant, vandalism, and basically the house became worthless, a lot less value, and the bank had to take a loss regardless. Then if they worked out some kind of a agreement about the payoff of the loan. Sometimes they worked out where the people maybe were going to, they let them keep the loan and add it or reduce the interest rate. There was all kinds of negotiations going on during 2008 to 2010. Well, we're in the same kind of boat right now. And actually, we have been in this situation for quite a few years. But we don't have anybody that has been able to negotiate with the bondholders. And the bondholders are just like the bank. And the reason is that our financial advisors are basically also represent the bondholders. It's extremely difficult to negotiate when you are also representing the other side. So we've let this thing go along and our vacancy increasing and not being able to make the loans and just proceed with it. No, the banks finally, the only solution they had a few months ago was not to pay the bank and the bondholders. The bondholders, the only option they have right now, unless they sit and negotiate with them, is basically start a foreclosure. And for doing that, they would have to get a receivership and go what they call a judicial, which you go through court. And it's not an easy thing. Now, most of you that own homes here are what we call a trustee sale, which is in California, has made it very easy for the banks to go ahead and foreclose. It only takes about 4 months, 4.5 months to go ahead and foreclose. Back east, they have what they call judicial foreclosure, which means you have to go through the courts. And sometimes it takes 2 years, and there's also the provisions that actually you can get your property back. It's a very difficult for the banks, so it's harder there, and that's why they actually are more strict about loans back east because of the difficulty of judicial foreclosure. So in this case, they have to go through courts. They cannot just go in and go for a trustee. They have to go to judicial court through a court process. The first step is asking for a receivership, and that's because they don't want the funds to be spent in anything else right now. The receiver is supposed to be collect the funds and make sure that they're spent for the right things, at least the owners, and I'm saying using here the board as the owners, they worry that the owners would maybe take the money and leave. So the first step, but really, when you look at the bondholders, right now the bonds in the open market are not worth what we have. If they were going to sell the bonds, and I don't know how bonds work really. I know the trustee and I know but I know that the bonds also go up and down in price just like stocks. So the bonds are not worth the $60 million. And I think that the bank, the bondholders know that, and they only want to protect whatever they have. And so there is possibility of negotiations with them. But unfortunately, I don't think our board has ever tried to negotiate the bondholders to see what they can do as far as making this place economically valid. Because even with 54% vacancy, we're not that bad off if you cut a lot of expenses. We have close to $2 million that we pay for advisors. I mean, that $2 million a year, that's a lot of money, but they pay for advisors because the bondholders require some of those advisors. And on top of that, bondholders have required them to get other advisors. For example, we had PRS coming in. We've had many people that have come in and have given us ideas about what we should be selling the property, I mean, the rents should be and all that. And every one of these appraisers that they come in or advisors have cost money, and the cost usually anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000 for one of these reports. So the thing to do was to go in and talk to the bondholders. They have a 5.75% interest, which is a very high interest in today's market. And I'm sure that they, just like the other lenders that negotiated with the homeowners that could not make it, it would be to their benefit to try to do some negotiation. I don't know whether they try to negotiate or not, because we are kept in dark. So we don't know what they've done. And basically, my lawsuit is because we've tried to work with them, and we never get the answer. So the only thing that we could do was go on a lawsuit so that the court would require them to do some explaining and give us these answers. So my feeling is that we still have ways of going and saving the village. I'm not worried about saving the village. Now, with the homeowners, the problem that happened, actually the price of the property went down, and that's why they couldn't sell it, and they had to get the lenders to take a what we call a short sale. Well, in the village, actually, I think our value is up there. Well, our problem is the income on the value on the income that we have. That's what doesn't make us to be able to provide the loan for the payments. And that's why when they say they went on the market and only the two nonprofits came in to buy it, the problem was that when they go on the market, they're saying you had to come in with $60 million cash. Well, none of the nonprofits have $60 million. They would not come in and pay $60 million cash. First of all, it's not a requirement. I mean, it's you don't put this kind of a restriction on it when you're going out in the market to try to sell the property or get a partner. So the presentation on it was not done the right way, and that's why you have a for-profit company coming in, because they're not buying it just for the income. They're buying it for potential of fixing the place and also increasing the vacancies, I mean the occupancy here. And that's the typical for-profit company that comes in. And the nonprofit could have come in too, but the nonprofit will not come in and put $60 million cash here. They would come in and maybe work out something with the bondholders. And the reason we were pushing for bankruptcy, which is, it's really, it's a misnomer because it's a structuring of debt. That's what it is if you go to Chapter 11. Most of the time you go Chapter 11 in order to do, structure your debt. There would have been a possibility for the board presented to the court and get some help from the court to work out with the bondholders as far as reducing the payments or extending it. And there's a hundred ways of working out the debt. I mean, I can't even name it. So they didn't do that. Instead, they've been using our funds to basically make the payments to the bond. We should have done that quite a few years ago. Finally, we've gotten to the point where the receiver has come in. And usually that's the case on a foreclosure too. When the foreclosure comes in, then you do have the option of going to bankruptcy in order to see whether you can work it out or not. But even now, I don't know what the board is going to do. But the other problem that we've always had here that we do not get, we get a financial reporting, but the financial reporting really does not have, at the finance committee, we get the financial, but at that reporting does not have everything in it. For example, the administration cost we only have one lump sum. I don't know how much we're paying for marketing. I don't know how much we're paying for anything, because that is not separated in our financial report. So it's very difficult trying to work with these numbers. But that's basically what I wanted to say, what this receivership is. The bondholders didn't have any choice but to do that. Actually, I think the bondholders' complaint is exactly the complaint that we have in our lawsuit, which is the board, mismanagement of the board. Thank you. Any question I ask, be glad to answer.
Thank you, Sherry. At this time, is there any